Greedfall is an action RPG that released in 2019. You play a child of royalty named Desarde, tasked with exploring a new world as a representative of your homeland, the fictional area called Serene. But you're not the only one who's interested in the new world. You'll also meet other factions who want their slice of the pie. One believes their religion entitles them to the land, another wants the resources, and the people that are from the island just want to live their lives and go about their business. This game surprised me in a few ways. It blends old-school game design with smooth, fun combat. When you're faced with a challenge, you usually have a few different ways of dealing with it. You'll have to think about where you put your skill points, because you won't be able to do everything. I invested in charisma and intuition. These opened up new dialogue options and gave me a better chance to sway people in my favor. Other options include lockpicking, being able to break into areas directly and unlock chests with the best loot, or science, allowing you to create explosive concoctions, opening up walls for a path through. Sometimes you'll need to repair something, and the crafting skill will allow you to save money by creating it, or you can fix what's broken. Another worth mentioning is vigor, a skill that usually only affects health and endurance. Here, it also means your character is fit, so they can cross a balance check or climb up a wall. I love the creativity here. Each faction has their own armor, so sometimes it's as easy as wearing their colors and walking up to the guards and saying their shift is over. At one point I was listening in on a conversation, but no one in my party spoke the native language. So I went back to camp, switched in the party member who spoke the language, and it allowed her to translate what they were saying. This felt very rewarding to figure out. There wasn't any message telling me what to do. Instead, the game trusted that the player would put things together. In this way, Greedfall felt very refreshing, a fantasy world that I got excited to come back to in between play sessions. This game reminds me of a few other games. The dialogue and choices remind me of The Witcher 2 and 3. The combat and level structure remind me of the old Fable games. And it even reminded me of the first Dragon Age here and there, in ways I can't quite put my finger on. Now, anytime you compare games with classic great titles, it can hold unreasonable expectations. I'm not saying that the game is knocking it out of the park in all these elements, just that it reminded me of other games I liked. If you've played those titles, there's a good chance you'll feel the same. The game has a relationship status for each of your party members, but also for the different factions, similar to Fallout New Vegas. As you play, the choices you make in quests determine how others will view you and your faction. Sometimes not every faction will agree with you, or even like you. Many quests can often be solved with dialogue alone, if you invest in charisma and intuition. Overall, the quests are pretty great, and none of them felt like filler or fetch quests. In an early quest, for example, you're tasked with smuggling some goods onto a ship. You can try to convince the captain to let things slide, or sneak into the warehouse and forge the paperwork. Another option is to create a sleeping potion, mix it with wine, and use it to knock the guards out. Or you could simply go to the warehouse and fight everybody. The amount of options and gameplay freedom is outstanding, and it all depends where you invest your skill points, and how you choose to play. Some quests really surprised me too. During one I had to be sneaky and follow someone. I acted like a gorilla and ended up getting caught. Although the quest didn't fail. Instead, the character called me out and started talking to me. It opened up some dialogue options and continued on. I wish more games did stuff like this. The combat has a nice flow to it. Dodging feels responsive and sharp. You have a good deal of choice when it comes to how you fight as well. You can use blunt weapons to take down an enemy's armor, or blades to more quickly bring down their health rather than armor. There's also guns, one-handed pistols, and two-handed rifles, letting you attack from range, along with a mage class, which I chose to start as. You can easily change up your tactics or playstyle as you level up, and can use an item to respec your skills if you want to completely do something new. As I played, I became more of a battle mage, swinging around a two-handed mace and casting stasis to freeze my enemies. The mage route was a little different than expected. You can't cast fire, ice, or lightning like in most games. Instead, you have more support-style skills, stasis being the first. You can also unlock healing, armor, quick dash, an area of effect knockback spell, and group stasis. This was unexpectedly lots of fun. I found myself bouncing back and forth between taking down the armor of enemies, keeping my partner's health and armor up, and using stasis to stop them. These spells and skills become more powerful and beneficial the more you level up. For example, the healing spell starts out simple, only affecting you, but then increases the amount healed, eventually also heals armor, and later turns into a group heal for the whole party. The stasis spell increases the amount of time it stops enemies, and adds a damage bonus to enemies who are frozen, becoming quite useful for mob control. Mage's main weapons are rings that allow you to quickly cast range-style missile spells. They can also do a teleport close range attack and a larger missile spell, something I did in the beginning, but later favored melee so I could save my magic pool for stasis and healing spells. The game gives out levels at a good, slow pace, in the sense that you don't feel like everything is always an option. Often I'd bank a skill or two, just in case I needed something specific, like maybe a level 3 lock was coming up, or I'd finally put a level into science if blowing through a wall was the only option outside of chaos. This can be mitigated a little bit later in the game. I eventually discovered you can upgrade your armor to include a charm that gives you +1 to either vigor, science, or lockpicking. I didn't invest in crafting, so I didn't realize this till later. I wasn't completely locked out of crafting either, even though I hadn't invested any skill points in it. I could instead pay a skilled blacksmith to craft for me, something that became very handy as my adventure continued. At one point, I upgraded my party member's armor so much that it became far superior to my own. And after seeing it didn't require any endurance skill checks, I quickly swapped out the outfits and completely changed my look. Ended up loving it, so I rocked this look for most of the game. It's worth noting that capes grant a +1 to charisma, so what you wear can really add to your build and your options. As I mentioned, one way the game really reminded me of Fable was the way the world is designed. It may look open world from afar, but it's actually a bunch of smaller to larger sized areas with entrances and exits. This makes the areas much more digestible and made exploration feel worth it because I could see how much progress I was making on the map rather than just aimlessly wandering. In each area, you set up camps, and these act as markers for fast travel. This made backtracking for quests and searching for specific items much less time-consuming. One cool thing the travel system does is every time you leave an area, you load into a self-contained camp. Here, you can swap out party members, talk to them, and start their personal quests, and there's also a merchant, making selling off loot and junk easy. This took out the task of having to go back to town to sell off loot. Conversations in this game remind me of the Witcher series, in the sense that sometimes you only have 2 options to respond. However, each will lead down a wildly different path. Again, expectations. I'm not saying that this game has the Witcher level of writing and storytelling. That's not really a fair comparison. However, what is here is good, and I found myself getting drawn into the story and often losing track of time when playing. The voice acting is phenomenal, and I can still hear the voices of my companions in my head just thinking about them. While there's plenty of popcorn fantasy cliches here, there's also a great deal of surprises along the way, and memorable quests. Without getting too specific, one companion asked me to help him investigate the death of someone he knew. This led to a string of events uncovering corruption within his own faction. Another companion asked me to join him in gathering up dirt on the leader of his faction. I was weary at first and wondered if I was walking into a trap that could spoil the relationship between my faction and theirs. Instead, we found out the opposing faction leader had a hand in routine events of debauchery, information that could surely sway them in my favor, should we need to bring it up. Stuff like this really stuck with me after playing, and intrigued me to jump in and play more. Another quest line that stood out to me was one involving the religious faction. While investigating what happened to a group of alchemists, I discovered new information about their religion had been uncovered. This angered some followers and caused them to act violently. I was left with a choice: bring the new information to the higher-up, or bury it and keep it quiet. I chose to bring the information to the leader of the religious faction. It took some convincing, and I had to use their own logic to help them understand and sway things in our favor, mentioning that their religion's founder once faced extreme scrutiny in the early days when the religion got started, but he stayed true, and everything they believe now was built on his discoveries. His new discovery was that their beliefs and the native beliefs are 2 sides of the same coin, that near the end of his life he embraced the natives and their beliefs, intertwining with his own. This discovery could prevent a lot of bloodshed, as there had already been issues with their missionaries going out and trying to force their beliefs on the locals. This highlights some of my favorite things about fantasy stories. Sometimes there's a chance that things can actually work out for the better. The fashion options in the game are also worth noting. Your character can look like something straight out of Bloodborne with tricone hats, long coats, and pantaloons, or rock some indigenous wear like my character. The armor and plating upgrades can change the look of the clothing as well, with some of the end results reminding me of Dark Souls armor, with one shoulder pad much bigger than the other, scrapped together in a makeshift style. Upgrading always felt rewarding, and it came with a high price tag for me, because I had to pay others to craft for me. It became a fun routine in between exploring sessions and quests. Same goes for the weapons. and I was surprised at how devastating they could become after upgrading. This became a fun and rewarding gameplay loop. The trophies in the game are worth a mention as well. They're all pretty doable, and most are unlocked by simply playing the game. Things like do so much damage with this weapon, or max out skills for this class. You can easily platinum the game if trophy hunting is your thing. They also encourage you to make different choices in the story. Personally, I love replay value like this in my RPGs. A reason to pick up the game again and make a new character. I tend to come back and do new playthroughs of games I like, and this is one I'm going to visit again at some point. Some of the enemies are pretty creative. One of my favorites was a land shark type of creature with a thick tail that could knock down your party. Another standout are the Guardians. These are mini-boss type enemies scattered across the world. We learn that they're protectors of the land. There are different types, and they're often tied to certain areas, such as a beach guardian or mountain guardian, for example. Some are tied to quests, but others can be stumbled upon while exploring. I took out a few while adventuring through a map, one being a swamp guardian of the woods. Her character design is awesome, creepy as hell, and made me curious as to where she came from. I found out her origins later in the game, and I actually felt pretty bad for taking down this enemy, something I wasn't expecting. We take another one down just before finding out this information, and the NPC who lives nearby is absolutely shattered when he finds out. The game's not perfect. However, I personally believe it's better to try for yourself rather than going in with expected negatives. If the positives I mentioned sound intriguing to you, then this game is definitely worth a try. It's a game where you can get lost in its world, jump from conversations of diplomacy to combat and exploration whenever you feel like switching it up. Greedfall has been given away for free a number of times. Turns out I have it on Epic and GOG as well. However, I wanted to play it on console, so I picked up the PS4 version on PS5 for about $12. I absolutely got my money's worth. Have you played Greedfall? Did it remind you of the same games, or am I totally out to lunch? If you haven't played it but now want to check it out, let me know in the comments. This is Tasty Birds. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this content, please subscribe. It really helps me out. I'd really like to go at this full time, and any kind of support really helps. Thanks again.